Hi, in this short video we're going to talk about Clause 10, Improvement from the ISO standards. Please take the time to follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So we're going to talk about improvement. So if you were to ask me, I would say this was and is the most important clause within the standard. If you did everything else and you didn't complete improvement or didn't do anything about improvement, I don't believe you're going to get the real benefit of your system. One of the key things for me about a management system and about the activities that you do, as you'll have heard me talking about in terms of risks, lessons learned, weaknesses, errors, all that sort of stuff that I spoke about through all the other sections, really brings you to sort of say, well, what are you going to do about all of that activity, all of that information you've got, particularly the stuff that you've analysed and got data on? Well, ultimately what you want to do is improve it. So you want to try and improve your processes, you want to try and improve on non-conformances, you want to try and improve on error, cost, wasted time, you want to try and improve on your health and safety performance. And it could be that this analysis that you've done has driven you down the route of putting improvements in additional areas. You might bring about investing in something because it will minimise the impact of errors that you've identified. So there's no right or wrong way in how improvement's done. It's just good practice to be able to demonstrate as a result of everything you've done up to this point of the improvements you've put in place. And of course, as part of that improvement activity, you want to also be able to demonstrate how well it's been, how successful it's been. So that plan, do, check, act is a cyclic type approach. So it's looking for you to evaluate how well your improvements are doing. So whether those improvements are on actions to address health and safety or environmental risks, whether they are actions to improve upon increased error in the business. So part of your internal audit process is significantly focused here. It's looking at, well, you can effectively take a contract, a job, a project, and follow it through looking at changes, looking at how change management occurred, looking at the monitoring and measuring you do, the analysis of compliance, looking at the data that was gathered, what information that data gave you, and what actions were taken. And when we talk about improvement, it can be things referred to as lessons learned. It can be business process improvement. It can be fundamental production process improvement. It could be the use of software to improve your services. It could be the use of software to make you more efficient internally. And as a result of that, you can walk through these as a part of an internal audit process and see how these processes have linked to each other and how the output of one has fed into the other. And ultimately that improvement should then be able to result in evidence that things are going in the right direction. When we talk about improvements, we have to think about what it is we're trying to do. So often improvements can be associated to a reactive measure. So something has gone wrong and we need to correct it pretty quickly. So it could be something that's been identified internally yourself, it could be something that's just simply down to human error, or it could be as a result of being informed by a supplier, by a client, or whatever that may be. But it's basically a reactive measure, so something that's put in place pretty quickly. It's important that when we put an improvement in that's a reactive measure, that we recognise that it's ideally not a containment measure, and where it's a reactive improvement, that we verify its long-term measure. We then have to think about gradual improvement. So where these improvements are gradual, it's because they're investing in time to educate the workforce. They're investing in time to work with their supply chain. They're investing in time to update their documentation to try and show people the benefit of what they've learned. So they're not looking for instantly for things to improve overnight. What they want to see is a gradual, incremental improvement and a reduction in that scrap level, a reduction in the amount of error that occurs relative to the investment that they've put in. Then ultimately we also have creative improvement. That creative improvement can be born out of issues that have happened or data that we've analysed. It could be born out of just simply information we've been provided from an external source. It could be born out of internal engineering activity that allows us to be a little bit innovative and introduce engineering processes, engineering controls that can improve upon our health and safety or improve upon our waste management. So it's just being a little bit creative that might drive that improvement. I'll give you one really simple but actually quite effective improvement that I see as creative. Doesn't sound very creative, but actually the result of it I thought was quite impressive. A fairly large electrical distribution company, it's part of their creative initiative to drive improvement in their environmental waste management. One of their guys, just a warehousing guy, realised an opportunity that what they were finding was most of their waste was basically based upon packaging. So they had stocks of large quantities of materials coming in and out of their facilities all the time, and they were then downsizing those packages, storing them, repackaging them in smaller quantities and shipping them out. The result of that was that at that time they were destroying the large packages that came in, i.e. going through their waste management, paying money and putting processes in place to control it. They were buying in boxes of the appropriate size for the repackaging, but importantly they were also buying in foam packaging material. Ultimately they were investing money in that. The warehouse guy came up with a great initiative, which was basically he got a local small engineering company to create an industrial shredder for them, and effectively it allowed them to run all of their cardboard and material that came through from their supply chain through this industrial shredder that injected some air into it as well at the same time. But ultimately what it did was it replaced them having to buy any packaging protective material, the cardboard and materials that came into them. The result of that was that they didn't have to pay for any of the cardboard to be handled through their waste control. They didn't have to buy the additional packaging material. They invested on a shredder and the return on investment happened within 4 months. Okay, the last one really then is transformational. So these are where there are significant big improvements. You take over an organisation, an organisation takes over you. There's been significant investment and a new board comes in, or they're investing lots of money, or you're opening up another location, or you're going in to provide a different type of service or a different product, so you're diversifying a little. So big change that goes on and big improvement. But again, this big improvement can often come with risk. And this is why I hark back to taking this back to the risks and opportunities. So it could be quite significant opportunities as a result of transformational change, increase in funding, increase in turnover, increase in profit, increase in employee numbers, so on and so forth. But it can also have quite significant negative effect if it's not controlled properly. So in terms of non-conformity and corrective action, this also falls into here in the final end of improvement, purely associated to ensuring that where non-conformity and corrective action is required, and it can come from pretty much anywhere within the organisation, it's important to recognise the containment, investigation, root cause, corrective action and preventative process. It is very common for organisations to stop at the corrective action. It's very common for them not to look at, well, has it been successful? One of the ways, if your business is quite weak at looking at how successful the preventative measure is, one of the ways to capture this is actually as part of your internal audit process. If you use your internal audit process to look at effectiveness of corrective actions or effectiveness of improvements, it's a great way of responding to demonstrate whether it's a preventative measure or not. It's a good way of looking at, well, your investment in your corrective actions or your improvement activities are successful. And your internal audit process is a fantastic way of doing that.
Thanks for watching this video. If you've not had the chance to see all the videos in this series,
please jump back to the beginning in clause 4, where we talk about the context and walk through all the various clauses within the ISO standards.